on, viewers, and shift our focus to another big story of the day. Our nation wants to know, should organizations in India receiving foreign fundings not face the scrutiny of law enforcement agencies? Should the government not keep a close watch on such organizations? But if the government does, then how far can it go? This is something that we are going to be focusing on. Our nation wants to know this evening. In India, viewers, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act governs the acceptance and utilization of foreign contribution. Administered by Ministry of Home Affairs, the existing act does three things. It identifies who can accept foreign contributions and on what conditions. It specifies how that money must be received, accounted for and reported. And it restricts a defined set of foreign-funded activities that could affect India's sovereignty, security and public order. Now, the government has proposed some changes via FCRA Amendment Bill 2026. As per the government, this bill seeks to establish a framework for supervision, management and disposal of foreign contributions and related assets when an organization ceases to hold an FCRA certificate or a registration certificate. It proposes creation of a designated authority that would take charge of foreign contributions and assets if the registration is cancelled, surrendered or not renewed. Now, this provision created uproar. There were protests when the amendments were first introduced in the Lok Sabha on March 25 earlier this year. As per sources, government may introduce this bill, FCRA Bill 2026, with amendments as early as tomorrow. And that's the reason why we are discussing this today. The authority, the designated authority, as per the government, will have powers of a civil court. And this authority can order the transfer or sale of these assets of these organizations only after their registration is cancelled, surrendered or not renewed, either to the government itself or to others. This proposal is at the heart of the debate. Now, this has sparked concerns not just in India, but in the US as well. It was US Congressman Chris Smith in May, ahead of US Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to India. He urged Rubio to raise this with New Delhi. And now we have another US Congressman, Riley Moore, who has stepped in. He not only called the bill anti-Christians, he even said that this could impact India-US relations as well. Back home, from the Congress to the Samajwadi Party, the opposition is accusing the centre of stifling the voices of the minority communities. Congress, on its part, has even questioned the funding of RSS and asked why only minority organizations are being targeted while organizations like RSS continue to get a free pass. Government, on its part, has tried to assuage the concerns. The government maintains the orders of the empowered authority are not only subject to revision, but can also be contested in the court of law. Centre maintains the courts are fully empowered to review any cancellation, and hence organizations functioning under the FCRA Act need not be concerned. Sample the war of words, and then we will open up this debate.
दलित संगठन और अनेक संगठनों को बाहर रखने का एक षड्यंत्र रचा जा रहा है। सिर्फ संघ समर्थक लोगों को, समर्थित लोगों को और संगठनों को पैसा मिले, चंदा मिले, दान मिले, सब कुछ मिले, ये थोड़ी चलेगा।
It is against all those NGOs who are doing charity and service to the poor, and it is also against minority.
केवल क्रिश्चियंस का सवाल नहीं है, वो देश में रहने वाले अल्पसंख्यक उनके जिस तरह से अधिकारों का हनन भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार में हो, जो अल्पसंख्यक संस्थाएं थी, उन अल्पसंख्यक संस्थाओं के जो अधिकार थे उनको छीन लिया गया।
People feel that it is being done to throttle certain communities from getting donations, and sometimes they're the actual charitable donations.
Section 16A of this bill is going to affect all sections of society. Of course, Christians are one section, and the other religious minorities are also there. These are all going to affect all sections.
I think the opposition is just indulging in scare tactics. Every country, every government has a right to know about sources of foreign funding.
विदेशी धन से अचानक आंदोलन खड़ा करें, आंदोलन हिंदू मुसलमान में मतभेद करें, अचानक हिंसा प्रकट करावें, ये विदेशी चंदे का भी तो एक लेखा जोखा होना चाहिए ना। मना कहाँ कर रहे हैं?
विदेशी फंडिंग से देश में भ्रमजाल फैलाने का काम किया है। उनको देश को अस्थिर करने के लिए वो प्रयोग करते हैं। अब बताइए, कांग्रेस कह रही है कि हम यूएस के लॉ से हमारा भारत चलेगा।
And joining us on the broadcast this evening is a special guest. We have PDT Achari, who is a constitutional expert and former Secretary General Lok Sabha. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now this evening. You've called this FCRA Bill 2026 a threat to civil society organizations. Government, on the other hand, says it is a step towards transparency and accountability.
Well, see, it's nobody's case that there should not be any regulation of the foreign funds which come into this country. And there is no disagreement on that. Because every country which receives foreign contribution or foreign money certainly imposes certain restrictions and regulations, which is necessary in the interest of the sovereignty of the country, in the interest of the political stability and so on. There is no dispute over that. But here, so far as this new bill is concerned, you know, there are certain provisions which cause a certain concern. And, you know, the first concern is with regard to the property vesting in the authority. Now, under three conditions, the property vests in the authority. One is the cancellation of the certificate. Second is the cessation of the certificate. Third is surrender of the certificate. Now, if you analyze these provisions, then you get an impression that perhaps this is going to be misused because it has tremendous potential for misuse. Now, just one thing I would point out, that is surrender. Suppose a person gets foreign contribution and he uses it, acquires certain property and he manages it. At one stage, he finds that the income that is generated from this asset is enough. So he doesn't require the foreign contribution any longer. In that case, he can surrender this certificate. Doesn't any longer need such a contribution. But here the law says that if a person surrenders his certificate, then the whole property goes to the government. I do not really understand why such a provision has been made and what exactly is the logic behind it. Similarly, you know, the registration can be denied, number one, on public interest. Now, public interest is what? After all, government is the custodian of public interest. It has not been defined in the law. And the public interest is what the government thinks it is. If that is so, there is a lot of subjectivity in that process. And secondly, there is a provision concerning the people or organizations which convert people from other faiths to another faith using force or using certain blandishments and all that kind of thing. But there, the law says if a person is prosecuted or convicted. Prosecution means the charge has been made against that person in the court of law.
Okay.
Is that enough to deny or cancel the certificate which has been given by the government, or deny such a certificate, registration certificate, to a person merely because he has been prosecuted, not convicted?
Okay. You've raised a couple of very important points, Mr. Achari. One, of course, is cancellation of the certificate. You've also spoken about the powers this will give to the designated authority. Now, the government in the amendments that are proposed has mentioned, one, designated authority manages only assets created from foreign contributions. So I think there is clarity here that it does not mean if a particular NGO or an organization that is getting foreign funding and has created assets with its own money, everything will be taken away by this designated authority. The assets that have been created with that foreign money, only those will be taken away. And also the government says the orders of this designated authority are also subject to revision and they can be appealed before the court of the district judge. Do you think these safeguards are not enough?
You know, I do not know whether the government has suggested any amendment to this section 16A2. The section 16A2 very clearly says, an asset shall vest wholly in the designated authority, whether created or acquired partly from foreign contribution and partly from other sources. That is something which is contrary to what you are saying.
I am quoting,
If that is
sir,
so,
what the government has put out. The government of late has been putting out, detailed reports and press releases on what these amendments really bring. So I'm just quoting from what the government has put out. The document that I have with me is a press release by PIB that was put out recently. Here, the government is trying to bust some myths. According to the government, it's a myth that the government can seize an NGO's assets under the 2026 amendments. And the government here, in response to this myth, is saying that the designated authority manages only assets created from foreign contributions, and once an organization's registration has lawfully ceased, vesting is initially provisional with full restoration if registration is renewed, and orders of the authority are subject to revision. This is what the government has said in its clarification to the concern that you raised.
okay, actually the point is, suppose a person is running an institution, maybe an orphanage or maybe a school or maybe a hospital, with 20% foreign contribution and 80% raised from other sources, internal sources. And under this law, under this particular provision which I quoted just now, the whole property can go to the authority, this designated authority, provisionally, of course. But then there is a provision which says that if an application is made, then they will look into it, and the 80% of that property can go back. How will you enforce this particular provision?
So you're saying perhaps this area needs to be strengthened. There is a loophole here that you cited. Government should strengthen it. Sir, I want to also talk to you about another big issue that is being flagged in this country and abroad also, as far as the amendments are concerned. And many believe that this is targeting minorities in this country. American, lawmakers are suggesting that this is anti-Christian. In your article also, you have mentioned that, there is a provision of cancellation of registration certificate, and that can be misused. Somebody can just go and file a complaint alleging that there is religious minority conversion that's happening. So how do you see this? And do you also believe that this is targeting a particular community or a religion? Or do you think something can be done to fix this particular loophole?
No, what I'm saying is that what I'm doing is to point out certain loopholes in the law. That is my intention. Here, I look at the wording of the law, and then I say that this is the impression which this particular provision creates. A religious organization which is running, which is engaged in, a religious organization or individual or whatever, induces another person to convert to another faith. That is what it says. Now, that person can be either, if he is prosecuted, then also he will lose the thing. And if he is convicted, of course. But if he is prosecuted said, as I said in the beginning, that a person is prosecuted when a charge is made against him in a court of law. So even before conviction, under this law, a person will lose his property. Now, think about the practical things which are happening in the country. So this is an area of concern, and the government has to address this. That is what I'm saying.
Sir, in the end, if I ask you very quickly, if the government is listening to you right now, 2-3 things very quickly that you want the government to address as far as these amendments are concerned. The bill is concerned. We're hearing it may come up tomorrow itself. And do you think the bill, after these changes, can actually be helpful for our country going ahead?
Certainly. As I said in the beginning, a bill for regulating the inflow of foreign funds, foreign money is required in this country. required in this country. There is no dispute over that. There are no two questions about it. The only thing is the provisions which are a little harsh. And in some respects, some of the provisions, or maybe one provision at least, is very impractical. So these are the things which the government should look at and address the concerns of the people.
And twice, sir, very quickly again, you mentioned that you get an impression, that's the impression that's being created. Do you think perhaps the government needs to be more clear in its communication as far as the amendments are concerned, and that's lacking?
Absolutely, that is what it is. Government should have a relook at it, or maybe this can be referred to a committee which will have a very closer look at all these provisions, and they can, in fact, the committee, invites all the stakeholders and get their opinion, and accordingly they can suggest certain amendments to make it more reasonable and more practical.
And with American lawmakers calling it anti-Christian and also saying that it can have an impact on India-US ties, how do you see these statements?
No, I have nothing to say about that, because I have no opinion about that. I'm not looking at what the Americans are saying, but I'm looking at the law.
Should Americans be saying anything about something that's Indian issue, like it's an Indian bill, it's for, our interests?
No. All that I'm saying is that this law needs a relook. Certain provisions will have to be softened so that the misgivings of the people can be removed. That's
interesting. Thank you very much, Mr. P.D. Acharya.
Okay.
Appreciate you joining us here and sharing with us your perspective. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's now open up this debate, viewers, with our guests. We have R.P. Singh, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Tushar Gupta, Political Analyst, Professor Deepanshu Mohan, Economic Affairs Expert, Manasvi Thapar, Lawyer and Political Analyst. Good evening to all of you, gentlemen. Appreciate you joining us here on Times Now. Mr. R.P. Singh, let's begin this discussion with you. If you heard what Mr. P.D. Acharya said, the intention might be right, but there are a lot of concerns that need to be addressed from the government side. Also, better communication is the need of the hour, because there are loopholes that are there as far as the amendments are concerned. How will you like to respond to the points he made?
Well, before I start that, I need to show a small video clip. 35%, 40% से भी ज़्यादा लोग registered है मशीन, चाहे केरला या गोवा दोनों में एक है. 40% तो registered मशीन ही है, जैसे पंजाब में. This is Ankur Nirula, one of the pastors in Punjab, claiming that he does conversion. He says, keep your name as whatever else, but you still are Christians. Mansi is on the debate. He knows Punjab better than me. And this is what is happening. So you can have foreign funding, opening schools, colleges, hospitals, whatever designated money comes, it should be used for the designated objective. Not for conversion, not for changing demography. This has happened quite long in this country. This can't happen. 55,000 crore rupees came, 55,000 crore rupees came in 2022. Again, what is the objective? It should be clear. And it has been marked for objective, then I have to file in the fulfillment of the objective. I mean, if I'm an NGO, so if I get money from foreign, whether and again, not Christian or Hindu or Muslim, any NGO which is getting any money from any source, will have to go through this now. It's not that it's only for Christians or Muslims or Hindus. It's for all, equal for all. So whoever receives money will have to tell where has he used the money? What's wrong in it?
Okay. Manasvi Thapar, how will you like to respond? Because government is saying, BJP is saying that the idea is to bring transparency, to create a framework so that there is accountability, so that if foreign funding is coming, say for a particular purpose, for a specific social cause, then it should be used for that cause and it should not be diverted for something that it is not intended to be used for.
No, 100%. There is no doubt about it. As a nationalist, I believe that is the first thing which we should do. 20,000 crores in a year, we get foreign funding through various channels of foreign funding, which comes to lots of NGOs in our country. BJP is in power since last 12 years. And today they decided that this kind of a bill has to be introduced in the parliament. And in June 22, they notified the rules without, I don't know under which FCRA section, and under which authority they could have done that. So these are questions, and also now a designated authority is appointed, which can seize the property, which can transfer the property, which can sell the property, and without a judicial order. So these are so Kathni and Karni mein there is a total difference in what is being discussed. As a nationalistic person, as a religious person, I would believe that the fund should not be utilized to create changes in your religion, to create ghar wapsi of anyone, or get against the Christians. This kind of idea should not be promoted in our country. Conversion should not happen. Conversions of Hindus should not happen. That is okay. But at the same time, how do you create a designated authority which can transfer your assets, which can sell your assets without a judicial order? So
no,
these
but then government says the orders of the authority are subject to revision. That's point number one. They can be appealed before the court of the district judge. Also, vesting is initially provisional with full restoration if registration is renewed.
So my entire point is, for example, the incident happened in Kerala. So there is a hospital in Kerala which was been funded, heavily funded, and 50,000 patients used to get treatment, and most of them come from a lower middle background, mostly from the poverty-driven background. So these people did not get that FCRA license renewal because of the administrative work. Now they get an authority letter that their property could be seized. So these are genuine people who are getting.
But the government has addressed that aspect also. Government has said that people are saying cancellation of FCRA registration always means organization has done something wrong. This is incorrect. This claim is incorrect. The government has said many cancellations and non-renewals, like you said, are administrative, arising out of non-filing of annual returns or other issues, and courts in that case remain fully empowered to review any such cancellation.
So why don't we have a check and balance before that? So before you cancel it, why don't you give an opportunity to all those people you are cancelling it because of the administrative process, and then if the cancellation happens, you go to the court. That happens with Surface Act, that happens with IBC, that happens with lots of other acts, wherein if there is a default of someone, a financial default of someone, there are notices given to that particular person. For example, now because FCRA license is so important for so many NGOs which are going to get cancelled, and then that partiality will not be seen. So then this would be a clear indication that your FCRA is going to be cancelled because of administrative issue, which could be anything. And any NGO which is working anti-Hindu or anti-nationalistic activities are being done, cancel it immediately. But those NGOs which are working in a proper fashion and they would have to go to the courts, that is something which is wrong. You should have a check.
How valid are these concerns? How valid are these concerns that are being raised by the opposition?
This is happening.
Okay, Manasvi, I got your point.
A genuine NGO, whatever God's work it is doing, it should have its paperwork in order. It's that simple. It holds true for an MSME also. Any MSME has to file its GST returns, its income tax returns, its employee returns, everything, all the data on time. They have to keep their paperwork complete, be it a small MSME, be it a big corporate. So why it should be different for NGOs? What different are they doing? Sure, they're so busy working on the ground, helping people, doing God's work that they cannot file their paperwork in time. What kind of ridiculous argument is this, Veena? We are just asking that in this country, whoever is doing any work outside the purview of the government, as citizens, we should know where the funding is coming from. If it's an NGO that's indulging in anti-national activity, sure, their funding will be traceable. The government should take action. Even if it's a genuine NGO, the only request a citizen should have, because a lot of citizens are also supporting these NGOs in whatever way they can, is that the paperwork should be complete. So while a citizen like me wants to help out an NGO, they shouldn't be afraid that this is perhaps something else in the guise of something else. It's that simple. The law of the land is supreme, irrespective of the work NGO is doing. I don't care if the NGO is feeding 100,000 kids every day. Their paperwork should be complete, because the parents of those kids or citizens like us who want to further the activity of the NGO, help them further, they want to be assured that this is the right thing, this is the legitimate thing. And for the anti-national NGOs which are sponsoring protests against copper plants, against Great Nicobar project, against projects in the Himalayan states, I think this is why they are failing this regulation.
Okay,
because their activism economy, their activism economy will come to a grinding halt, and that is why they are fearing this amendment.
Okay, RP Singh and Manasvi Thapar both want to respond, but before that, let me also take the opening comments from Professor Dipanshu Mohan as well. Dipanshu Mohan, isn't it a valid point that Tushar has made, and those supporting the amendments are making, that what's wrong in having accountability, and any legitimate NGO or an organization that is receiving foreign funding should have its paperwork in place?
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me here. I would probably say that the person you consulted on the matters of the legality and the constitutionality of the bill itself with the FCRA has made some very sound points before we got in the debate. So I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties right here. I think the issue is very clear. Number one, the question around transparency, accountability is separate to the process of making the procedural normative conduct itself as part of the punishment. I work very closely with organizations. I'm an academic. We depend a lot on surveys across different networks. Many organizations, particularly social organizations, despite keeping all paperwork, are extremely scared on how FCRA has been weaponized over the last at least 4 or 5 years in making things as difficult as possible. There's a structural regression of the fourth pillar. And let's not look at FCRA alone as the issue here. I mean, there is a context to a larger issue which one needs to really get at is the lack of depth of debate on parliamentary legislation which has afflicted the current government. And I think that's a larger point which one wants to look at. I mean, if you look at the data, if you look at the 16th Lok Sabha and the 17th Lok Sabha, even before this, only 16 or 25% of overall legislation has passed on to any committees, to any discussion. You've had amendments made as important to legislations as Manrega, you have had the Shanti Bill. Look at each legislation. There has been effort almost to railroad legislation without due diligence. And we can debate about the fact that there are issues. Every bill, every act, every law comes with the best of intentions. When it's put in the execution process, you don't really know how things work because the bureaucracy takes over. So we have to simplify things and we have to bring civil society into the conversation. We're not even talking to a lot of the civil society organizational members who are suffering from the process of paperwork. And you need the fourth pillar. To be honest, you need the fourth pillar.
Professor Dipanshu Mohan, I take offense to the point that you made earlier about the fourth pillar specifically. You said there has been structural regression. I mean, I don't really think that. I mean, it's a platform wherein we are discussing something very crucial, and we are discussing it because we want to know all sides of the story. So I really do not appreciate such a comment from you. If that wasn't the case, then we would not have people from all sides telling us what is right and what is wrong, so that our viewers can make an informed opinion. So let's not talk about what the perception of some people in this country is. I really don't want to get into whataboutery here and targeting of media. It's the most convenient thing that people do when they do not have a direct answer. I asked you specifically about a point that Tushar had made, that if the government is talking about accountability, transparency, and if the government is saying that if a registration is cancelled for a certain reason, you can go to the courts. And if somebody is doing the work honestly, why will that person be punished? I have not done anything wrong. I don't have any fear. I will have a fear if I have done something wrong. It's as simple as that. And I'm sorry, please stop targeting media. It's very convenient and it hurts. We are doing our job. It hurts, Professor Dipanshu Mohan.
Okay, well, first of all, if you're asking questions, allow me to respond. I am neither interested in anchors taking the job of panelists. It's not for us to really get into this.
No, but then you can't target media. I'm sorry. You can't be on a channel and start targeting media. I asked you a question, Professor Dipanshu Mohan.
Fourth pillar, and I respond. Allow me to respond. See,
you just can't pass a comment like this and then say, I can't have an anchor behave like a panelist. I asked you a question.
Exactly, because you have to allow me to respond. And if you don't let me respond, there's nothing you can discuss. I've made 2 points here, and I think you have cherry-picked on this whole issue. I've said that there is a lack of depth of debate. It is not about FCRA alone. You look at the Constitution 120th Amendment Bill, which is also tabled right now. There are two contentious bills. I've written about this in an Hindustan Times article yesterday. Please look at the article. I've raised the issues. If you've done your research properly while bringing an academic to the panel, look at what we have argued. There is a whole
Professor
question.
Dipanshu Mohan, we've got you on the panel today to understand your point of view, so that viewers get to know the other side of the story. What are some of the loopholes? We are discussing FCRA regulation bill. But you can't target the media, sir. I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
I said, yes, exactly. There is a structural. This is the point. The evidence is in your conduct is the evidence.
Please.
In your conduct is the evidence. You're not letting.
See, this is the problem with academicians. They understand theory, they do not understand practicality. This gentleman says that the civil society should be consulted during the creation or the formulation of this bill. Are MSMEs and corporates consulted every time the GST meeting happens? Are MSMEs and corporates consulted every time a new rule on taxation comes up? The man wants us to simplify stuff, wants citizens and the government to have a simplified stuff, and yet he's the one complicating it. Look, let's be clear. NGOs are no special entities. They are just a non-governmental organization. They have to go by the law of the land. They have to file the paperwork. If someone has a problem with it, they're sure to shut their NGOs and move to a different country and do whatever work they have to. But stop treating NGOs like a special entity as if they're beyond the purview of the law. I don't know how an economics affair expert does not understand this.
Anyway. No. So if you allow me to respond, I'll respond. Because the question here is, as I said, the FCRA was enacted in the emergency in 1976, which was targeted on political funding. The 2010 Act broadened oversight of NGOs. The 2020 amendment mandated a single SBI account, which cuts permissible administrative spending from 50 to 20%. Each iteration that has happened, it has made Aadhaar mandatory for office bearers. It has banned the onward transfer of funds between organizations. A number of things have happened. Each iteration has tightened the state's grip on the same sector. If you have bad actors, you have bad apples, do act against them. In fact, each speaker has said this. The 2026 bill is the point at which oversight of funds has become ownership of assets. We've talked about this. There's a designated authority that is being created. And this is not about FCRA. And that's what I'm trying to say here. Okay. You have a problem in how legislation is being used as a rubber stamping exercise to shut off the opposition to any bill.
Okay,
and this is not
wants
for
to come
FCRA.
in. Manasvi wants to come in.
Hina, I don't understand the love of the government to take the assets of the NGOs. Banning FCRA funding of anyone who's getting into conversion or getting into anti-nationalism is okay. Ban that particular NGO, ban that particular personnel, that is completely okay. That particular thing is completely okay. But my understanding of this covering on assets, this bulldozing entire system of anyone is something which is wrong. And also further, checks and balances have to be established. India is a living country. India constitution is a living document wherein you evolve. Laws are going to be evolved and government's authority is to create laws and acts, and that is completely okay. But consulting those people who are experts, consulting with the that's where the parliament comes in. Discussing, tabling bills is one part and discussion is the other part of things.
That is the reason why, gentlemen, before I started this debate, I had a conversation with somebody who understands this business. And we understood that, yes, there are certain loopholes, and the idea is to see whether those loopholes can be plugged or they need to be dropped completely. But, it doesn't mean that you start targeting the platform here, which is something that I have a problem with. And I hope Manasvi also agrees to the point that I made. RP Singh, please respond to the concerns that have been raised from the other side. And Tushar, then I'll come to you.
Well, gentlemen was saying that bills are not being placed in front of the committees in the Parliament, Income Tax Bill, Insolvency, Bankruptcy Code, Jan Vishwas, and there are many, every bill goes through a lot of committees also. And again, Parliament is a platform to discuss and then debate. I mean, if a gentleman has any concern, he can write it to Leader of Opposition or even to the government also, saying that these are my concerns. We'll appreciate this should be discussed in the Parliament. But just making a sweeping remark, and Manasvi, as far as asset goes, if those assets are being misused for a wrong objective, I don't want to name certain people in the Punjab, you know better than me, that how assets are being misused for mass-based conversion. So this has to stop. You can use it, as I said, you can use it for making hospitals, schools, whatever you want to, and no one has ever stopped that also.
Okay. Tushar, now that was the point that Mr. PDT Achari also raised in the discussion I had with him. Say, for example, there is a hospital that is partly funded by foreign money, okay? And suddenly, if the designated authority decides to take over this asset after its registration certificate is cancelled, won't it be unfair because that hospital that was working, you know, for the welfare of patients and people in some part of the country, it's only partly funded by foreign money. Rest of the money for, you know, has actually come from different sources. So isn't that a valid point on which government should bring some kind of clarification?
The keyword, Hina, here is partly funded. Now, who decides that threshold of partly? That is the government. Who ensures that their paperwork is complete? The entity running the hospital. Now, you and I can be certain that a responsible NGO doing such a responsible job, like running a hospital, caring for people in dire need, would be very intelligent to file its paperwork on time. These NGOs are not a cause of worry. These are not a cause of concern. And even the government doesn't think about them. The problem is the NGOs that run a completely different operation, dwell around the activism economy, try to stall projects. You'll see a lot of them coming up during the Great Nicobar project discussion, Hina, in the coming months. You've seen a lot of them in Tamil Nadu. You've seen a lot of them in Kerala when the port was coming up. You've seen a lot of these NGOs during the Narmada Bachao Andolan in the 2000s and early 2010s. These are NGOs that stall the nation's growth. And if the government wants to confiscate their assets, hand it over to a more responsible company, though I can be certain these entities won't be running hospitals and schools. They would be running a very different ecosystem. Yet, let's assume they're running hospitals. They can be transferred to a more responsible private or government authority that can ensure that the operations
Manasvi wants to come in. Yes.
Hina, I don't understand that how do my country become so fragile? An NGO can stall the growth of my country. I don't think any government has been so weak that NGOs can actually stall the growth of my nation, or 1.4 billion people's growth can be stalled by one NGO, two NGO, hundreds of thousands of NGO. That's a completely wrong narrative which has been spread out. One thing which I completely believe with the government is conversion should not happen. A forced conversion should not happen. Any anti-national activity which is happening in my country should be stalled immediately. But I don't believe this particular fact that my NGO or a group of NGOs can stall the growth of my nation. That is completely wrong narrative.
Tushar wants to respond, then Professor Deepanshu.
That entire hypothesis is wrong.
Why was the biggest copper plant in this country shut? How did we go from a copper exporting country to a net copper importing country? If you think the Narmada Bachao Andolan did not delay the development around Narmada Dam, then I'm sorry you do not have your facts in order. It's not about what NGOs can do to a country's growth.
Quick rebuttal, Manasvi. Then Professor Deepanshu. Yes, very quickly, please.
Am I supposed to believe that last 12 years the growth of my country has been stalled because of few NGOs? Because of the political will? Because Atalji could not work out? That's why Narmada Andolan or copper plants could not work out? No. I would not say any government of my country was anti-national or any NGO had that power. Let's not give any power to the NGOs.
Professor Deepanshu Mohan, closing comment. Any constructive suggestion that you have for the government so that the real intention that the government has is actually achieved? What we desire from this particular bill, what the government desires, transparency and accountability. 2 constructive suggestions that you have for the government.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would say the government's intent in terms of the nature of amendments it has passed requires structural revision. You require a greater deliberation on to the extent of which what is being amended is for the actual purpose of what the intention is being cited. There can be always contested narratives we can talk about. It requires greater debate. The determination to pass a bill and enact it as a law of political economy. And by political economy standards, it is no good if you have legislation which is rubber stamping its way into affecting institutions that could later on affect your own larger institutional structure.
Any constructive suggestion as far as this particular bill is concerned, on the basis of what you have read so far, on the basis of your understanding of how NGOs, foreign-funded NGOs function, and the problems that they probably face that can be misused?
I would probably say it's good for the government to have a list of the organizations it is seeking to take action on. Rather than bringing in an amendment, take actions. There are enough measures already there in the legislative armor of the government to take actions against those organizations.
Mr.
We don't need this amendment.
Mr. R.P. Singh, I will give you the last word.
Well, again, the bill will be discussed in the parliament, and every parliamentarian has the right to discuss that in the parliament and debate in the parliament. There's no one being stopped from discussing that in the parliament. But the issue is, again, we can't allow foreign funding to be used for changing the demography of the country. And Manasvi agrees with me because he hails from Punjab and he's seeing what's happening on ground in Punjab today.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, all of you gentlemen, for joining us here on this debate. We will slip into a very, very short break.